Good morning, everyone. I'm John Deeks, the editor of Insurance News, and thanks for joining us today for this webinar, From Policy to Claim, Building Lasting Loyalty at Every Touchpoint, brought to you by Guidewire and Smart Communications. Now, customer satisfaction in insurance is often associated with the moment of truth when customers make a claim. That's when a policyholder really finds out whether their insurer is going to deliver on its promise. But increasingly, the industry is recognizing that trust and loyalty are built at much earlier points in the journey through communication with customers at every stage of the policy lifecycle. Technology is without doubt changing the game, and today I'm joined by a panel of experts to take us through this critical issue. Michelle Abro is Insurance Product Owner Professional Services for Guidewire and has more than 20 years' experience in the insurance industry. She has supported transformation initiatives that redesign customer journeys, modernize communications, and use technology and data to create clearer, more transparent interactions. Welcome, Michelle.
Thanks, John. Great to be here.
Eileen Potter is the Vice President of Vertical Marketing for Insurance at Smart Communications, where she leads industry strategy, thought leadership, and go-to market programs that help global insurers transform customer engagement. With deep expertise across the P&C and life markets, she partners closely with product sales, customers, and the broader ecosystem to modernize communications, digitize key workflows, and deliver smarter, connected customer experiences. She was recently appointed to a 2-year term on the Guidewire Technology Partner Advisory Council, where she will help advance innovation across the sector. Hi, Eileen.
Hi, John. It's great to be here.
Fantastic. Well, one thing just to flag up for everyone listening before we get going, you will find a Q&A section towards the bottom of your Zoom window, and we encourage you to type in questions as you think of them, and then we'll tackle those at the end, assuming we have time. So, Eileen, let's get started with you. Every company wants to keep its customers satisfied. That's kind of obvious, but why is it particularly important for insurance?
So, I think because at its core, insurance is a grudge purchase. People buy it because they have to, not because they're excited to. They need to buy it, either because they're mandated, legally, as in for motor insurance, or because, possibly they have a mortgage on a property or a business. And it's really typically a low touch product. So after initially when you purchase it, there aren't a ton of opportunities to build brand loyalty. The most frequent touch point is billing. So paying a bill is not a very exciting opportunity to interact. So it's hard for insurers to build loyalty. So really price and experience become the real differentiators. And if the experience isn't good, customers will leave, especially if they have a poor experience during a claim. And ultimately, communications plays a major role throughout the policy lifecycle. If people understand their coverages, even if they have a claim, it's just a better experience overall. Smart Communications each year commissions an independent research firm to survey insurance consumers about this. And, to understand what drives someone to purchase a new policy or to renew their coverage. And so in our 2025 report, we found that 84% of insurance customers say that communications that they receive from their insurer are a really big factor in their experience, and that 67% of those customers would switch if communications did not meet their expectations. And just to close this out, so I recently moderated a panel at Guidewire Connections, and one of the speakers from a joint customer, Shelter Insurance, he said something that really stuck with me, that he compared the ideal customer relationship with kind of talking to an old friend, that even if you haven't spoken in a while, it feels like you've just talked yesterday. And that should be the bar for insurers. And that when a customer, has a loss, they want to feel that we already know them and we're ready to help them just without missing a beat.
Yeah, that's a really nice way of putting it. Michelle, do you think it's fair to say that the reputation of an insurer is shaped by its interactions with customers? Presumably, the claims experience is crucial, but what are the other key moments in the customer journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we look at some of the stats that Eileen mentioned there, and more broadly, PwC, for example, did an article last year that in their research said that 87% of customers would see their claims experience as something that impacts their decision whether to remain. 80% would actually switch insurers if they didn't have a claims experience. After complaints last year, the delay in claims handling was a top issue. So, yes, without a doubt, the claims experience is critical. I would say following on from that though, the post-claim and the post-settlement experience is a key touch point. Many insurers view the payment of the claim as the finish line, but for a customer, it's about that's the beginning of their new perception of what it means, what the value of insurance is. I guess that's a real an undervalued touch point is that post-claim settlement. And that carries forward with a customer into their renewal touch points. That claim is again front of mind for them at renewal. They don't see it as two different things. And it's how they continue to value insurance. So when they get that renewal notice through, if that premium is higher, that can be seen as, I guess, a penalty for claiming. So there's an opportunity at renewal as well to change the narrative, to really reframe that claims experience from being a negative impact on premium to demonstrating the financial benefit that the customers received. And I think that's something that health insurance does really well. So that post-claim settlement through into that renewal, I think that's a really key opportunity as well.
Yeah, brilliant. And where do you think insurers can fall short, and why is this happening?
I think generally we are seeing, or finally seeing the industry shift from a transactional mindset where a policy is just a PDF and a claim is just a cost center to one that is more considerate of the overall customer journey across that entire life cycle. I think there's two key areas that are ongoing challenges in that. One, I think if we have a lack of a holistic customer-centered communication strategy, communication tends to be a bit of an afterthought. It's a byproduct to a policy or a claim transaction. And it's that one-way task-driven message. It's a communication at a customer at that point in time, rather than being an ongoing conversation with the customer throughout the life cycle. It's often designed from the inside out, so it can be siloed in departments, and it sort of leads to that fragmented customer experience. And I think this is where insurers have a real opportunity to think about their communication strategy as a whole and purposely designing a communication blueprint that defines the brand experience that's consistent across all channels throughout the life cycle in any of the products. I think another challenge that makes that difficult is the current data and technology landscape within the company. Data is customer data and policy data is across multiple systems. Each have their own data structure. The data management is really fragmented. So being able to orchestrate that and bring all that data together and make it work effectively is really difficult, and it's really expensive and time consuming. And so I think those are challenges that a lot of insurers are still grappling with.
Yeah, sounds very interesting. Eileen, how can insurers communicate better to build trust and retain loyalty? And what does good look like?
So Michelle said it all. It's about building this holistic communications strategy. It's not just your brand voice means something. The way you communicate with your customers throughout the whole policy life cycle, it means something. It comes down to being, is it timely, relevant? Is it on the channel that a customer prefers? And really helping a customer take the next step. Saying something like, "We'll be in touch soon." What does that mean? People want clarity. What's happening when? What should they expect? Insurance is complex. For me, for Michelle, talking about we've been in the industry, each of us more than 20 years, we understand our policies, we understand what they mean, but insurance policies can be confusing. And so to communicate with that clarity, making it personalized, the clearer we are, the more trust that we build. And we shouldn't talk to customers only when something goes wrong. We should help them understand their coverage. Michelle talking about this, like this is key. It's not siloed communications. It's this holistic strategy. And, I'm going to repeat the statistic because the stakes are really high. Customer retention is one of the most important metrics for an insurance organization. And if almost 70% of customers will switch from a carrier if communications don't meet their expectations, those numbers really jump more dramatically. With younger generations, it's not just a cost center. It's like, how insurers want to retain that business, and communications is a critical part of that.
Mm. And Michelle, how can technology act as an enabler internally, potentially lifting job satisfaction and engagement?
Yeah, I think if we think about it internally and what it means for the employee experience, that has a flow on impact to the customer experience as well. So I'd say internally, first thinking about leveraging modern technology means that insurers can be really confident in a governance and compliance perspective. So they know that all that any correspondence that's sent to a customer is immutable. We can trust what was sent, when it was sent, regardless of any changes that happen in the system later. So you always have that permanent record and audit trail. Using workflows and automation can help meet regulatory obligations that can be scaled across multi-brand and multi-product, so you really get the benefit across the whole system. But I think directly, if we think about the impact on frontline consultants, if we can make their job easier to do, it means they can be better at it and enjoy it more. It's not such a challenge. And so, as an example, the integrations that we have between Guidewire products as the system of record and SmartCom as the customer communication platform really helps reduce workload. Document templates are easy to find, they're easy to edit, they're predefined with content that's compliant, and that can be used multi-channel, so consultants don't need to think about what to say and how to say it. It's flexible so that they can continue to edit the content just to be specific to and personalized to the customer. But those edits can be controlled through workflows. So they can go through an approvals workflow, which helps really maintain that integrity and reduce the risk of compliance breaches. And ultimately, how that plays out for the customer, they see higher quality and more consistent communication across every interaction that they have. And that in itself helps to build trust and just seeing that consistency. It's always, plain English, it's the same experience across any channel.
Did you want to add anything to that, Eileen?
Oh, yes. So technology is just an enabler. I mean, this is I feel like, we can't get through anything with talking about AI, but I do think that this is part of the conversation now. AI can help free people, and technology in general can help free teams to be human when it matters most. Claims agents shouldn't be stuck wrestling with clunky systems when a customer is going through something painful, not being able to find the right information or find a file. Technology should take care of routine tasks so agents can focus on empathy. If your windshield is broken, you just need the facts. You need to know, where can I get this fixed? If your car is totaled and someone is injured, you need an agent to be there to really help you so you understand the next steps to communicate what you need to do and your coverages, in a way that is going to be helpful and not cold. And it also helps insurers to use, the right channel at the right time with the right message. Even, in straight through processing scenarios, you can still deliver personalization, relevance, and compassion. And to Michelle's point, so platforms that are integrated like Guidewire and Smart Communications help eliminate the old swivel chair problem. Agents can work directly within Guidewire Claims Center seamlessly. I feel like insurance is both transactional and relational, and technology can help insurers manage that transactional side more efficiently, so teams can show up fully for the relational moments that really define customer experience.
Yeah, fantastic. And what about Gen AI, Michelle? Everyone's talking about this, but how can it be incorporated in future? What do we stand to gain, and what are the risks?
Yeah, I think as Eileen said, we're already seeing Gen AI being used really to demonstrably improve efficiencies for frontline staff, whether that's consultants helping them synthesize a lot of communication, so really complex medical or assessor reports, whether it's summarizing policy documents and really finding answers to questions faster. That can help new staff onboarding. It improves that overall time to competency for new staff, and really distilling and create and even being used to create content. I think interestingly, on the flip side, Gen AI tools are also in the hands of the general public. So we're starting to hear that customers are using Gen AI, for example, maybe to write a complaint letter. And that can make it more challenging for staff as well, to manage that complaint. There maybe a 10-page complaint letter with hallucinated references in there. So that all takes time and effort to process. I think the important thing with Gen AI at the moment is a human is still in the loop. The accuracy does need to be checked. And ultimately, we need to have an explainable audit trail in terms of how decisions are made. And those decisions ultimately sit with a human. But as we look forward and we start to think about integrating agentic AI into workflows, I think that's where we'll start to see more use of AI doing the task and not just synthesizing. It's obviously still emerging, but I think it's a really exciting space to be in and to experiment as that matures and in a sort of controlled risk fashion, but really deliberately training agentic AI agents on specific workflows. I think ultimately can help improve overall communication, consistency, and just have that sort of robust professionalism.
Yeah. Now, Eileen, some people would have a view that customer satisfaction equals talking to a human being. Tell me why that might not always be true.
So like I just said, a lot of it depends on the complexity of, is it a policy question or a claims question? Like what, sometimes a chat bot, especially more sophisticated chat bots, can work just fine. But really, it depends on the customer. It depends on the situation. Different generations prefer different channels, different situations, make different channels more preferable. And context matters. We live in a world, it's kind of convenience driven. Often customers just want to get something done quickly on their own time. And that's when they would prefer to self-serve. It can deliver the experience that they need. Guided tools, I think that this is something too. So we've all, I'm sure, dealt with the chat bot that you're just like, it's the interaction is nothing. Like it can't answer the most simple of questions, but really guided tools can, like pre-filled forms can make processes easier while still feeling supportive. And truly, Michelle said this, transparency around AI is important. Customers want to know how it's being used, especially in claims or in policy, in any situation that requires decisioning. AI can gather information, spot anomalies, support decision making, but it shouldn't make the final call. That's where insurers need to be careful.
Yeah. Okay. And presumably compliance, Michelle, has to be front of mind all the time throughout any transformation.
Yeah, I would say even the shift in the regulatory environment over the past few years is contributing to the need for transformation itself. The industry really needs to adopt modern technology to meet those obligations. So that can look like automated case management systems, multi-channel integration, or using AI and analytics tool to proactively scan text and voice data to identify those vulnerable customers. Not to mention the demand on uplifting capabilities around data and reporting. I would say also that security needs to be front of mind as well. We're now in this world with deepfakes and AI content is really widespread, and customers have a growing awareness of cyber threats, and that's driving a heightened mistrust and skepticism. So every time an insurer sends an email or a text message, there's that split second, is this real? Is this a scam? So if communications look fragmented or there's inconsistent branding or it looks like it's coming from a suspicious domain, it's not just untidy anymore. It's actively triggering a red flag warning to customers. And so to bring that back to winning trust and loyalty, it's no longer just about paying the claim, it's really building trust incrementally at every interaction. Those communications and that engagement, it needs to be instantly recognizable, verified, and consistent. So that a customer never has to guess and they know that they're speaking to their insurer.
Yeah, excellent. Sum this one up for us, Eileen. Explain why this area is so critical for insurers to act on and what happens if they don't.
So, Australia has one of the most robust regulatory environments in the world. And, to protect insureds, the goal is simple: a fair, strong, efficient financial system. And if insurers don't take compliance seriously, the consequences for them are significant. They risk losing customers, they risk damaging their brand, and then they face more regulatory scrutiny. Trust and reputation are paramount for insurers, and if customers stop trusting their insurer, the relationship's going to end, immediately, and that's not what organizations want.
Well, there's some fantastic points there. So just a reminder to everyone listening, this is your chance to ask the experts. So get typing away on those questions, and we can have a few minutes to put your questions to Michelle and Eileen, but there are a few coming in. So let's put some of these questions to you guys. You've touched on this already, Eileen, a fair bit, but is there a generational shift in terms of communication expectations and how customers prefer to engage?
There definitely is. Different age groups have different expectations about how they want to engage. Younger customers definitely want, digital first, real-time channels. Older generations may still lean toward phone or email, but even, for someone like me, I'm not a digital native, but I'm definitely digital savvy. And just for the convenience, it's so much easier. But across all groups, all demographics, expectations are rising. People want updates that are fast, clear, easy to act on. And really, it's about choosing the channel. They want the option to choose the channel that works best for them, in a moment, in a particular moment. They want those options.
Yeah, great. Okay, how about this one? How do you see omni-channel experiences from other sectors influencing the use of technology in the insurance sector?
Everyone wants, is that for Michelle?
Whoever wants to answer it.
Yeah, you can take it, Michelle.
Yeah, I was just going to say, sort of building on the last question as well. I think there's just a general expectation that regardless of the channel that I choose or how I interact with an insurer, I expect it to be consistent and the same. And to that point about insurance being low touch, there's not much to build on from past experience. And so when customers are, I guess subconsciously, they're setting their own expectations based on other interactions with other industries, maybe not deliberately. I know that, my delivery, I get emails about, what stage it's at. I would expect that from a claim. So I think it's, again, with digital normalizing now, it's just the benchmark is set whether customers are choosing to compare or not.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Um, okay, here's one about an issue that we've been writing about at Insurance News for a long time. There is a need to ensure that we use clear and easy to understand language when communicating with customers. PDSs have been notoriously difficult to understand as a legal document. Sometimes they have to be, but do you see AI as providing a tool to simplify the language and make it easier to understand?
I 100% do. But I still think that there's that caveat, and this is the balance. So insurance is a legal document. It is like this is a legal contract about a promise to pay. But and I've used this analogy before, speaking in front of groups of other people working in insurance. And so for my friends and family, um, if they have a policy question or a claims question, they come to me because I've been in the industry for a long time. Well, not everyone has an Eileen. And so why can't insurers, even with a disclaimer saying like, to understand all of your to understand completely, you need to read your policy, but you can explain, especially things that are specifically excluded. It's hard to summarize a whole and distill a whole policy down to something, but not leaving not leaving the important things in the fine print, but using AI to summarize, obviously with a legal disclaimer, obviously with a human in the loop. I just feel like that's something that that clarity on the front end will build trust throughout the relationship.
Yeah.
And I think just again, building on that, I think insurers are using AI internally to help their own staff with that challenge as well. So I think as the industry becomes more accustomed to using and trusting and training and using it intentionally, that opens the doorway to use those tools for educational engagement with customers as well. So yeah, I think there's a real opportunity there.
Yeah, excellent. Um, okay, this is rather blunt. Do you see people being replaced entirely?
I don't.
I
I think
don't know.
I think a human will. It will certainly change. I'm assuming this is about AI, Gen AI.
Mm.
It will change how people work. I think what's interesting is that it's so widespread. It's across so many industries, so many professions, so many skill levels. It's not just for techies or consultants. It's through into strategy. Like there's so many uses and applications. I think it is more about how you adopt AI to do business and to do business improve that in future. Um, yeah, I don't think it replaces a human. Probably not in my
So
opinion.
no, I agree with Michelle, and I think that this is really interesting because AI has been around a long time. It's not like AI was just invented 2 years ago, but because of tools that even a layperson can use, like ChatGPT, people somehow didn't realize like it's insurers have been using it, company organizations have been using it, technical people have been using AI, machine learning, large language models for a fairly long time. And I
Mm.
think another analogy is that adjusters used to have to get on a ladder and climb up on a roof to look if there was roof damage. Now you can use a drone to fly over a roof and take pictures. That's not taking away an adjuster's job, but it's hopefully they don't have to climb up on a ladder and climb up on a roof. So I think that's I don't know if that's a completely fair analogy, but it's a tool that can help, but it won't replace people.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. So there's one here based on the TikTok span of attention. How do we get effective, cut through, and clear communications across any channel?
I think that's an interesting challenge. Like people
Yeah.
don't want to read chapter and verse and three-page documents about the insurance. And so it's really about hyper personalization and understanding what customers need to know and what they need to do at that point that you're engaging. and really tailoring the messaging around that. I think it is a real challenge. And back to is a complex product. Insurance is a product complex and a grudge purpose. It's difficult to really drive that engagement.
Mm. Well, this is
So I
yeah. Carry on. Yeah.
no. So I think some of that is interesting. So with outbound communications, being concise. Do you want a text? Do you want an email? Those outbound messaging. But I think some of that people with short attention spans is also about how we're collecting data.
Mm.
So does somebody have the patience to fill out a clunky PDF form, or can you give them an experience that is just a lot of the information that a carrier has is pre-filled, and so dynamic questioning, that I think that can help, because some of this is outbound communications and some of it is how you're taking data in, because that's a part of the insurance function as well. And so making that easier and more intuitive and more dynamic, I think will help, can help as well.
Yeah. Great. And this question is similar in a way. It says, Eileen, are we seeing a shift to more interactive / video type communication that customers can access at any time?
Definitely. I think that you can have those video tutorials. I think that you can have, like I said, like dynamic, dynamic questioning. I think that all of that, reminders, if an insurance company reaches out to you via email and you don't answer your email, to be able to reach out to you and say, well, you didn't answer the email, maybe give you a ping on a text. Like, I think that those are the ways, if you're asking me if my personal email box is possibly a little bit cluttered and maybe I missed something, but I don't mind an extra ping, a reminder, because sometimes that is the impetus I need to say, like, oh, I totally thought I would do that later and I didn't. So I think that that's technology can help. Sometimes a reminder isn't an annoyance,
Mm.
but can be a good it can be a helpful nudge.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Here's another question for you. Customer expectations can be broad about when and why they should be covered. And yes, as a grudge purchase, a lot of people will just purchase without fully understanding what they're covered for and assuming that the coverage is there. Is there a case for the industry to lean into an insurance literacy campaign?
I would definitely advocate for that. I think that is, I think individual insurers can help by just communicating better. Like I said, like, making things, a policy is dense, bringing out, like, these are the most important things you need to know. This is your deductible. These are things that are specifically excluded. I think that's, but I like the idea of an insurance literacy campaign, because I think I just think that's another way to build trust, just as an industry.
I think the challenge is finding the right time to do that in a way that a customer will be actively open to it. And I think if we look at seasonality, major events, particularly where there's something in the customer's own vicinity, or a storm or a flood nearby, that's a key opportunity, because that's when people say, oh, did I renew my insurance? What if it happened to me?
Yes.
And so I think that's a key moment to build on. It just has such an impact from a community perspective in the media. It's just such a really good opportunity. And it is when people tend to really sit down and think about, what if that happened to me? What would I do? So yeah, the challenge is finding the right time.
Excellent. Yeah, we see the Africa complaints statistics dominated by claims issues. So last year, delay in claim handling was the top complaint about issue, and denial of claim was in the top five as well. Do you think it's inevitable that complaints will be dominated by claims, or can insurers use technology in some way to ease this area?
I don't think it's inevitable, but I do think it's interesting though that the complaint is about the delay, not necessarily the outcome or the process
Mm.
itself. So, what delay looks like to a customer again is driven by their unmanaged expectations. So I think, yeah, communication definitely has a role to play. And even if it's communicating that there is a delay, that creates trust that you haven't been forgotten, you haven't been lost in the system. And so even when things are not going to plan and there are those delays, which is inevitable, particularly in the supply chain side, availability of materials and whatnot. So yeah, I think, just having that consistency and transparency in itself builds trust. And I don't think complaints are inevitable.
Mm, mm. Okay, well, perhaps we better make this the last one, but where do brokers fit into this debate? Is an intermediary a help or a hindrance when it comes to insurers communicating with clients?
I think generally, very simply, brokers have the same expectations and needs, but the different complexity is that they're also managing the customer on behalf of the insurer, so they have a responsibility, and they play a role directly or indirectly in that insurance life cycle. So I think for the insurer, it's then about, what are the right mechanisms, the right level of detail to share with an end customer versus a broker. So I think it's not help or hindrance. I think it's really just about tailoring the messaging to at the right time to the right customer and helping brokers do their job as well.
Yeah, yeah. That I feel like brokers can be incredibly valuable when they're aligned with an insurer's communication approach, especially for more complex policies. They add context, guidance. They can reassure a customer. It's important. A lot of customers want a trusted advisor, but to Michelle's point, they can it can create friction if messages aren't coordinated. And so I think really the key is making sure that brokers have the same information, clear, timely information as customers do, because when everyone's aligned, brokers can really amplify a customer experience rather than complicate it.
Mm, yeah. Well, that's been fantastic. Thank you very much, Michelle and Eileen, for your time today and your excellent analysis. And thanks everyone out there for tuning in. And we'll see you again for more insurance news webinars soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.